Welcome to County Magazine, a chance to find out what's new across Fairfax County. I'm Bryan Ashby. On this edition, we'll talk to Debra Miller of the Department of Family Services about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we'll learn about the county's Domestic Violence Action Center and the organization A Way Forward. Plus, it's October, so we have to talk about some cute and creepy creatures that seem to be everywhere this time of year. We'll get up close and personal with bats. Domestic violence is a family, community, and public health issue that causes widespread ripples that impact all aspects of our community. Fairfax County's Domestic Violence Action Center offers an invaluable range of critical services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence. Take a look.
So our story started off just like any typical love or romance story. I was 22, I was in college, I had just moved to the US from Germany, and he was an American soldier stationed in the area. Our friends introduced us in a restaurant, and we hit it off right away. I had a great chemistry, I had a lot of things in common, and he seemed perfect. We both were hardworking individuals, ambitious, and that's how he portrayed himself to me. But once we were married, Prince Charming turned into Prince Harming, and that mask came off, and slowly over time the behavior started changing. Who he was outside of the home was not the same as who he was behind the closed doors. When I did open up, I was actually told that, wait a minute, him? I can't believe he would do something like that. There was a disbelief, and there was this invalidation about my experience, because to the outside world, he was still Prince Charming. I didn't realize what I was in until many years later.
Domestic violence is a complex issue that needs supportive, compassionate, and well-trained individuals. The Domestic Violence Action Center provides a network of partners to guide victims of domestic violence every step of the way to a life free from abuse.
The Domestic Violence Action Center is also known as DVAC, and that acronym is used interchangeably to refer to a partnership as well as to an actual site location. As a partnership, we consist of about 16 county and non-county partners who are part of the coordinated community response, and we provide services to victims of domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, and human trafficking. And as a site location, our central hub or our main location is at the historic courthouse, and it houses advocates who provide a plethora of services to victims. We also have partners that provide counseling, but that's not our only location. We also have an advocate that's based in the Juvenile Domestic and Relations Court, and we also have advocates that are able to provide services out of the Herndon Neighborhood Resource Center in North County, as well as the Jerry Highland Government Center. So our partners provide a range of services from legal representation, shelter, housing assistance. Our advocates provide safety planning for victims. Our main focus is really to provide options to the victims so that they know what's out there and they can make an informed decision. We also provide services and assistance for those who have committed harm, who are seeking help. And so if you have committed harm, or if you want resources for someone who's committed harm, you could also contact DVAC and we'll connect you to those resources as well. It's important for people to be aware that there are services and there's help out there if and when they're ready for assistance. and that they shouldn't be afraid to make the call if they need assistance, because there are people out there that are ready, willing, and capable and able to help them. Whether they decide to stay or whether they decide to leave is completely up to them, and it's no judgment, and advocates and service providers will work with them and meet them where they are.
Healing from domestic violence is really a lifelong journey that somebody goes through. It's a very complex and traumatic experience in life, and it has long-lasting impact. I am one of the lucky ones who got out alive. Thriving after domestic violence is definitely possible, but please make sure you take good care of yourself.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Fairfax County. And with me to talk about the county's efforts to end domestic violence is Debra Miller from the county's Department of Family Services. Debra, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. So how do we define domestic violence?
Sure. So domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that can be used against someone's partner, family member, or household member to exert power and control. And so that can look like physical violence, threats, verbal and emotional abuse, financial control, sexual violence, technology abuse, and stalking.
So what communities suffer from domestic violence?
So domestic violence knows no gender, racial, or religious boundaries, so it can happen across all communities, and it does happen in all communities. However, some communities are at increased risk for different threats. For example, immigrant survivors might be at an increased risk of being threatened based on their immigration status, and LGBTQ survivors might be threatened by their partner to come out. So they might out them to their friends and family without their consent. So it's important to be aware of all of the different risk factors across different communities.
Sure. Well, so how does the Department of Family Services educate and support the victims of domestic violence?
Sure. So we have our 24-hour domestic and sexual violence hotline, which can be reached at 703-360-7273. And that is a first step. So anybody who might be experiencing domestic violence or has friends or family members can call the hotline and talk to somebody at any time to talk about safety planning, resources available. And if a survivor wants that ongoing support, they can reach out to our Advocacy Services and Domestic Violence Action Center, where they can have ongoing case management, safety planning, and things like that. We also have counseling services, mental health counseling services for survivors. We have our ADAPT program, which stands for Anger and Domestic Abuse Prevention and Treatment, which is an intervention program for 18 weeks for people who have used violence. And then we also do outreach and education around the community to teach people about this issue.
Well, that's fantastic. And we'll find out from Debra how we can help friends and neighbors who may be experiencing domestic violence. But first, partnering with the Domestic Violence Action Center and bringing emergency support to domestic violence survivors is an organization called A Way Forward. And here's more about the critical work they do.
So A Way Forward is a partner with DVAC. So what we do and our mission is to provide emergency and support services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence who are looking to transition to safe and independent living. So one of the things that we've done ever since the organization started in 1980 was use our government partners as referrals for clients in need. So anybody getting services from DVAC, from the Office for Women here, from the Women's Center, from IUTA, some of these other organizations, they can make referrals directly to us on behalf of their clients. We provide both emergency and support. So for emergency, we would do things like lock changes, provide security systems. For support, we do rental assistance, first month security deposits. We do utility payments for people that have moved into new housing arrangements. I just paid a T-Mobile phone bill for somebody that needs to keep in touch with the Fairfax County detectives from the Victim Services Unit. In some cases, we help with court clothing for women or survivors that need to go to court and don't have a clothing that they feel comfortable in. So anything that's needed for a new home, it might be furniture, bedding, so anything to really help someone transition to their new living environment. We're a small board. We're only 5 volunteers on this board. So we get requests that come in from different government agencies and a lot of those partners within DVAC. And we're able to turn around those requests really quickly. So something for emergency lock changes, we can get a locksmith out there within hours. I think it's very hard for someone that's going through this to need to go to one location, the courthouse, then to go to a shelter, then to go meet with advocates, lawyers, detectives, and DVAC really puts all those services in one location. So, these people that are coming in that need these services, it really helps them get from start to finish everything that they need.
Debra, we are so fortunate to live in an area with such comprehensive support.
Absolutely.
So what do we do if we suspect a friend or relative may be a victim of domestic violence, but we're not sure? Should we get the police involved, or?
The most important thing to do is to check in with that loved one and say that you're there to support them and you believe them. And so it's good to check with them what to do if there is an emergency, so how you can provide support. That might be calling 911, but that could also look like calling for transportation, providing childcare, offering your home as shelter or lending money, and other forms of practical support.
Okay, absolutely. So what are some of the ways that Fairfax County is recognizing Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
So we're starting off the month with Friday, October 7th. We are having the Domestic Violence Annual Meeting, which we do every year to celebrate the community success. And then on October 11th, we have a documentary screening and panel discussion on Crime After Crime, which follows a survivor's journey through the criminal justice system after fighting back against her partner. We also are partnering with community agencies to do a toiletry drive on October 15th. And then on October 20th, we have our Purple Out Day, where we wear purple to spread awareness about domestic violence. We are also trying to spread these kind of events throughout the year as well, so that domestic violence awareness is a 12-month out of the year job.
Perfect. So what can residents do to help support Domestic Violence Awareness Month?
So residents can speak out when they hear harmful behaviors happening. They can be an active bystander and speak out against violence and other harmful stereotypes and norms that might lead to things like violence. They can also join our volunteer services. We're always looking for our volunteers to help spread awareness in the community with us. And they can also visit our website at fairfaxcounty.gov and search Domestic and Sexual Violence Services and Domestic Violence Awareness Month to learn more. And they can also call our hotline at 703-360-7273.
Debra, thank you very much. That was an amazing amount of information. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your expertise.
Of course.
Fairfax Pets on Wheels is an all-volunteer pet therapy organization that provides companionship and an improved quality of life for residents in participating long-term care facilities in Fairfax County. To learn more and to find out how you can volunteer with us, visit fpow.org. Come join us. You'll touch someone's life and change your own.
This Halloween season, they arise when the sun sets. They feed voraciously in the dark. They strike fear into the human heart. No, not vampires, bats. And unlike vampires, let's hope, these winged mammals are all over Fairfax County, gobbling up as many mosquitoes per night as they can. So maybe there's not so much to be afraid of. It's hard to say. Let's find out. Lots of people think bats are downright frightening. After all, they check all of the scariness boxes. They come out at night, they live in dark, scary places, and they communicate via a high-frequency sound. So what is there to like? For starters, a single brown bat can catch around 1,200 mosquito-sized insects in 1 hour. Impressed? You should be.
Bats play very important ecological roles and are vital to the health of natural ecosystems. They also provide very valuable economic services. Most U.S. bats eat insects, and they are prime predators for night-flying insects and help to reduce populations that can impact agriculture or could be considered as pests. It's estimated that bats provide over $2 billion of savings for farmers annually due to reduction in crop damage and pesticide use.
So they have sort of a twofold effect on our agricultural crops, and everything we do, whether it's clothes we wear, products we use, food we eat, has something to do with a plant, and those plants are constantly under attack from insects, and bats are helping us with that. So things a lot of people don't know about bats are that bats are the only mammal that can truly fly. They don't glide. They actually have self-powered flapping flight. They are 20% of all the world's mammal species. There are over 1,300 species of bats.
Bats that we often find in Fairfax County include big brown bats, eastern red bats, silver-haired bats, and hoary bats. Some of the species, including little brown bats and tricolored bats, used to be very common in our area, but due to population declines cannot be frequently found here anymore.
The northern long-ear was listed as federally threatened. The little brown and the tricolor were listed as state threatened. And that's because of a disease that's attacking them in the caves where they hibernate, called white nose syndrome.
White nose syndrome, WNS, is a fungal disease that has killed millions of bats in North America. The fungus grows on the skin tissues of hibernating bats, repeatedly rousing them from hibernation and causing them to consume their winter fat stores and starve to death before spring.
So bats were already in decline, and then white nose hit. And so we've actually lost 97% of our cave-dependent bats in Virginia since white nose appeared around 2008.
To help protect bats and their habitats, there's a new monitoring initiative by Fairfax County Park Authority and the Fairfax County Wildlife Biologist. The initiative seeks to determine the presence of rare or declining bat species in county parks in the face of threats such as habitat loss and white nose syndrome.
We're doing this in 2 ways. We have acoustic monitoring equipment, which is out in the park all the time, and it records the bats. We actually can't hear their calls, they're ultrasonic, but the recorders measure this, and then we can run it through software in the office and determine what species we have. So this is a really useful tool for us. We also conduct misnetting surveys. So these are surveys where a team of trained personnel go out and survey for the bats in the field. And then when we capture bats, we can identify the species, take some data, measurements, and see what the health of the animals are.
An educational effort called the Save Lucy campaign was created to raise awareness of white nose syndrome and its devastating impact on North American bats.
So the Save Lucy campaign was started when I was doing education programs. Oh, it's been a while ago, but white nose had already hit, the bats were disappearing, and I would ask people, has anyone heard of white nose syndrome? And no one had. And I thought there's something really wrong with that, because if 97% of our robins disappeared, everyone would be up in arms. So we started primarily to raise awareness. But we also do rescue and rehabilitation, and I've been doing that for a long time. So we have some non-releasable bats that we can use as educational ambassadors that give people an opportunity to see a bat, not physically up close, but in a great detail, in an animal that's not angry and trying to get away from someone. These are adjusted animals, and they're just adorable.
Now that you've found out how incredible and amazing bats are, you can help them by creating a habitat for them. If you have old or dead trees on your property, and it's safe to do so, leave them standing. Bat houses are another great way to provide bats with a safe place to live. If you know where bats are roosting, don't disturb them, especially in early summer when pups are being born, or during the winter when they're hibernating. Hopefully now you have a much different view of bats and realize that the scariest thing of all would be if bats disappeared. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of County Magazine. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, a time to reflect and reach out. Be sure to visit the Department of Family Services to learn how And remember, there are countless ways to get involved in your community and make Fairfax County an even better place to live, work, and play. I'm Bryan Ashby, and we'll see you next time on County Magazine.